Here are the top stories for today, May 4, 2021. Malacanang says the country is doing good in its fight against COVID-19. Health Secretary Francisco Duque reports that a decreasing number of COVID-19 cases in the country as the government boosts its healthcare capacity. Rollout of Sputnik V vaccines in 5 selected cities in Metro Manila start today. And those who have finished the Step 1 and Step 2 registration of PhilSys for the national ID will receive their cards within the week. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Our top story for today, the country is doing good in its fight against COVID-19 compared to other countries. President Rodrigo Duterte said it is worth looking at the country's total COVID-19 recoveries instead of just the total number of infections. The president said more vaccines are coming as he hopes that the jabs would be effective against new coronavirus variants. The country now has 3 brands of COVID-19 vaccines in its inventory. These are Sputnik V from Russia, CoronaVac from China, and AstraZeneca from a British-Swedish manufacturing company.
When you try to figure out the actual numbers of the COVID cases, yung na-contaminate, recovering, tapos nakalabas na, kindly pag-aralan ninyo kung ilan ang nakasakit at ilan ang gumaling.
Meanwhile, the president said the government has already been distributing aid to low-income families with no publicity. He said the government has allocated billions of pesos for the social amelioration program to low-income Filipino families affected by the pandemic. He also assures that the government would continue to assist the people.
May binibigay ako sa poorest of the poor. Sabi ko, yung walang trabaho, walang makain. Nagdi-distribute kami. Wala yan, silent. Sabi ko, no publicity. Pero napipilitan akong i-publicize yan dahil I want to stress the point that there could have been a better way of doing things. There has to be some sense in, what you're doing.
Meanwhile, National Task Force Against COVID-19 Special Advisor Dr. Ted Herbosa pleaded to the public to seriously consider the government's call not to conduct and engage in mass gatherings. He said the national government is not suppressing their advocacies and rights, but it is concerned about the health and safety of each Filipino. He said humanitarian activities like community pantries are allowed, but it must be done in proper coordination with concerned local government units and in strict observance of the public health standards.
Tuloy ang pagbaba, maganda yon kasi nga epekto na yung ECQ at yung MECQ. Pero dahil nag-mass gathering event tayo, palagay ko magpa-plateau yan, yung maiipit tayo dito sa 8,000, 9,000, imbis na bumaba to 6,000, 5,000. Sa India po, nakita natin na nagbakuna na sila, 23% ng populasyon nagbakuna na. Pinayagan nila yung religious event, yung parang naliligo dun sa napakahabang river Ganges nila. At dikit-dikit ang mga tao, walang face mask, nag-suffer sila, dumami ang cases.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Francisco Duque said the healthcare utilization rate in the country has improved. Duque said the country now has 33,628 total dedicated public and private beds for COVID-19, while the total ICU beds now stands at 2,849. He also said that the hospital admissions in emergency wards decreased by 21% from April 18 to May 2nd, which means that Level 2 and Level 3 hospitals are currently decongested. The health chief also assures that the government continues to augment the healthcare workers in the various facilities in the country. Rollout of the Sputnik V vaccine has started this morning in 5 cities in Metro Manila. The health department earlier said that the jabs are safe for public use. Marita Mawai has the story.
In Manila, Health Secretary Francisco Duque leads the rollout of Sputnik V vaccines at the Santa Ana Hospital. First to receive the vaccine was Walter Rigonan, one of the administrative staff of the hospital. In Parañaque, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque is present at the pilot rollout of the Russian-made Sputnik V vaccines held in a mall. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr., who also witnessed the initial rollout, said another batch of Sputnik V vaccines may arrive in the second or third week of the month. Galvez stressed that herd immunity could be possible once the country gets a steady vaccine supply of at least 15 million doses per month. In Makati City, the first to receive the vaccine is a Japanese senior citizen. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Secretary Vince Dizon oversee the initial rollout of Sputnik V vaccines at the Makati Coliseum. In Taguig, healthcare workers begin to administer the Sputnik V vaccine to 20 persons belonging to the A1 to A3 category groups. Dr. Jennifer Lou de Guzman of the Taguig City Health Office said that they have special insulated box capable of safely storing Sputnik V vaccines at the required temperature of negative 18 degrees centigrade. The box can safely store 25 vials or 200 doses of Sputnik V for up to 5 days. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
President Rodrigo Duterte received his first shot of COVID-19 vaccine. Senator Christopher Bongo went live on Facebook to show that the president is getting inoculated with Sinopharm. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III personally administered the jab to the president.
So how do you feel, Mr. President?
I feel good, and I have been expecting this shot vaccination a long time ago.
In a separate statement, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said President Duterte's first dose was covered by the compassionate use permit issued to the Presidential Security Group Hospital by the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. The president agreed to get vaccinated for COVID-19 in public to boost vaccine confidence among Filipinos. Local government units in Metro Manila are coming up with more measures to contain the COVID-19 disease in their areas. Joyce Kudis will give us an update on the different programs in Makati, Pasay, and Quezon City.
In Makati, the local government established a home care program for residents with mild COVID-19 symptoms. The city's program package includes a COVID-19 home care handbook, monitoring sheets, maintenance medicines for other comorbidities, and medical kits such as vitamin C with zinc, pulse oximeter, thermometer, oral disinfectant spray, mask, and hand sanitizer. Patients will also have 2 dedicated online consultations with medical doctors. The program aims to decongest hospitals and isolation facilities. In Quezon City, the local government intensifies its efforts to contain the COVID-19 virus by hiring more than 1,000 contact tracers. The contact tracers are hired through DOLE's Tulong Panghanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged Displaced Workers program, or TUPAD. The city government will provide their needs such as protective gear and other necessities in the performance of their duties. And in Pasay, residents can now avail themselves of free online medical consultations and medicines under the local government's Kandili ng Kalusugan telemedical consultation program. Among their priorities are the vulnerable sectors such as senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and children. Residents are advised to coordinate with their barangay officials for appointments. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Joyce Kudis.
The Commission on Human Rights, or CHR, reiterated its support for the passage of the Media Workers Welfare Act. The bill aims to ensure that media workers shall be paid with the wages, allowances, and benefits provided by law to workers. It also mandates employers to provide additional insurance coverage to media workers, including death, disability, and medical insurance. It also ensures that media workers will be granted security of tenure after their 6-month probationary work period. Meanwhile, PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar has emphasized the vital role of having a free press during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. During World Press Freedom Day, Andanar said that an open, free, and pluralistic press remains a vital foundation of a democratic, informed, and empowered society. He also said that rights and freedom of the press have always been important to the Duterte administration, citing the various initiatives and legislations of the government, such as the Freedom of Information, Presidential Task Force on Media Security, and the expanded Soto Law. Andanar urged members of the press to help strengthen the trust and relationship between the Filipino people and the government by relentlessly combating malicious information that in turn can create confusion and public discord. Media channels and organizations in India have been working non-stop since the onset of the pandemic. These journalists are tracking and collating the actual number of COVID-19 cases and deaths in their country, while also experiencing losing their family members and colleagues from the disease. Stories of journalists contracting the infection while performing professional duties are coming from all over India. According to the Institute of Perception Studies, 77 journalists have lost their lives in April alone since the onset of the second wave of the pandemic. This means that on average, 2 journalists in the country have died every day in the past month. Meanwhile, Turkey reported nearly 26,000 new coronavirus cases on Sunday, bringing their overall COVID-19 at over 4.87 million. Turkey has so far administered over 23 million coronavirus vaccine jabs since a nationwide immunization campaign began on January 14. Turkey also started on Thursday evening a nationwide lockdown, which will last until May 17. Here is a look at COVID-19 figures worldwide. Up next, President Duterte is asking China to allow Filipino fishermen to fish in peace amid the maritime dispute in the West Philippine Sea. And travelers going to Pangasinan need to register and secure a permit before they can enter the province. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP, at ng himpilang ito.
President Rodrigo Duterte on Monday night appealed to China to just allow Filipino fishermen to fish in peace amid the maritime dispute in the West Philippine Sea. Duterte said he previously told Chinese President Xi Jinping that there is no reason to quarrel since Filipino fishermen simply needed something to eat. Duterte said he knew that China believes that it has sovereignty over virtually all the South China Sea, but noted that they are also aware that Filipinos are hungry. He said he is ready to talk with China in case of any conflict in the disputed territory. Duterte also thumbed down disrespectful behavior of the Philippines towards China. He maintained that China remains to be the country's benefactor despite any conflict. He also said that the country would not go to war against China as it is a good friend. Meanwhile, Senator Christopher Lawrence Bongo assured that national interest and welfare of all Filipinos are the utmost priorities of President Duterte when it comes to the West Philippine Sea issue. Go said the president needs to continue working with international partners in addressing the pandemic while also securing the country's interest in the West Philippine Sea. He said what President Duterte wants is to fight for what is right and set aside what needs to be set aside. He also said bickering will not undo the criminal neglect committed by the previous administration, which resulted in China's militarization of the West Philippine Sea. The Negros Oriental Interagency Task Force has received requests for free swab tests. Meanwhile, Cebu City reopens its sports center amid quarantine restrictions. More on this in today's Provincial Roundup from Marita Mawahe.
The Interagency Task Force for the Management in Negros Oriental will have to deliberate on guidelines and other matters pertaining to requests from certain sectors for free swab testing for COVID-19. Dr. Leland Estacion, Assistant Provincial Health Officer, said there are some entities who request that their personnel be excluded from the fees that the Negros Oriental Provincial Hospital Molecular Laboratory is charging for the RT-PCR swab test. She reiterated, however, that the swab tests are given for free only to suspected COVID-19 patients, their contacts, and those with flu-like symptoms. Those requiring RT-PCR swab tests for work and/or travel and other purposes are not covered by the free testing. Meanwhile, the provincial government of South Cotabato is working on the expansion of its existing treatment and the isolation facilities for COVID-19 to cope with the increasing locally transmitted infections. Governor Reynaldo Tamayo Jr. said they are coordinating with the province's 10 municipalities and Lone City for the establishment of more isolation centers. This as local government-run isolation centers are already facing problems on availability of spaces, while private hospitals catering to COVID-19 patients are now full. In Pangasinan, the provincial government of Pangasinan is now implementing the Safe, Swift, and Smart Passage or S-Pass travel and mobility management system for inbound travelers. Travelers bound for Pangasinan are urged to register at the S-Pass website. About 80% of the LGUs are implementing the S-Pass, while some queries and issues are still being deliberated in some areas of the province. Meanwhile, agrarian reform beneficiary organizations in the Ilocos region and government institutions have partnered with the Enhanced Partnership Against Hunger and Poverty Project. Ilocos Norte, Arbo supplies meal dries to the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology in Batac City and Lawag City, while in Ilocos Sur, an Arbo supplies vegetables, fruits, and corn to the BJMP in Cadgon City. In La Union, 2 Arbo supply meal dries, vegetables, root crops, and dressed chicken to the Ilocos Training and Regional Medical Center, ADOH Hospital, as well as in the BJMP in Agoo and in San Fernando City. In Pangasinan, 6 Arbos supply vegetables and meal dries to BJMP facilities in Urdaneta City, Dagupan City, Tayug, and Balungao Town, as well as to the Department of Agriculture. In other news, the Cebu City Sports Center reopened on Monday after being closed for 14 months due to the community quarantine restrictions. CCSC's 8-lane rubberized track oval is open from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. from Mondays to Saturdays. On Sundays, it will be opened only from 5 a.m. to 12 noon to give way to disinfection. Only 200 individuals are allowed to use the oval at one time. Other facilities such as the boxing gym, fitness center, swimming pool, and others will also reopen soon. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muahe.
Integrated energy firm Semirara Mining and Power Corporation has announced its COVID-19 vaccination plan for its workers and residents in Semirara Island. SMPC President and Chief Operating Officer Maria Cristina Gotianun said the company targets to inoculate over 5,000 employees and indirect workers by the second half of the year. She added residents of Semirara Island who want to be vaccinated can receive free jabs from SMPC. SMPC will also assist the local government unit in transporting, storing, and administering the vaccines. Gotianun added the company has also increased its employee quarantine facility by 27% to 276 beds. President Rodrigo Duterte on Monday night praised the start of online registration of the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys, on April 30. Duterte allayed concerns over technical difficulties that marred the pilot registration via the National ID online portal. The president said he appreciated the effort to push through with a pilot registration despite encountering problems on the online portal. He said having a national ID system has been the dream of every administrator in the government. Duterte recalled how past administrations have attempted to implement some form of national ID system but failed due to protests from the left who are afraid of being identified. National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA Chief Carl Chua, apologized anew for the inconvenience those who tried to register experienced. Chua cited overcapacity for the problems encountered during online registration. He also thanked Filipinos who have registered and are waiting to be registered for the national ID. Up next, those who have finished the Step 1 and Step 2 registration of PhilSys for the national ID will receive their cards within the week. Meanwhile, a Brazilian tactician is set to join the Philippine women's volleyball coaching staff. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. The first batch of Philippine ID cards printed by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is set for delivery this week to Filipinos who have finished Step 1 and Step 2 registration to the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys. The initial phase of card production and personalization produced a total of 956 PhilIDs packaged in a regular-sized envelope. The letter in the envelope contains both the PhilSys number and the physical card. Registrants are advised to safekeep the letter and use the PhilSys card number found in the PhilID when transacting. The first batch of PhilIDs produced will be delivered by PhilPost to registrants from various cities and provinces nationwide. Undersecretary Dennis Mapa, National Statistician and Civil Registrar General of the PSA, said the next step is to ensure that the production and personalization machines are running in good condition to determine the volume of the next batch of PhilIDs. Defunding the programs of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-LCAC, would simply allow communities to be exploited again by the CPP-NPA. This is the reaction of AFP Southern Luzon Command Chief Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr. to some calls to stop giving funds to the task force. Parlade said more civilians may die in attacks by the NPA rebels. He cited the death of 2 civilians and the wounding of 4 others when an anti-personnel mine exploded on the roadside of Del Carmen Patrol Base, Barangay Del Carmen, Uson, Masbate on Labor Day. He also reported how 17 regular NPA members voluntarily surrendered to the government in San Jose, Occidental Mindoro on April 28. The NTF-LCAC was created by virtue of Executive Order Number 70 to provide an efficient mechanism and structure for the implementation of the whole-of-nation approach for inclusive and sustainable peace in the country. In sports, a Brazilian tactician is set to join the Philippine women's volleyball coaching staff. The Philippine National Volleyball Federation, or PNVF, announced that 54-year-old Jorge Souza de Brito will be joining the coaching staff currently led by head coach Oji Mamon. The development came after the International Volleyball Federation allowed the PNVF to bring in a foreign coach. National Team Commission Chairman Tony Boy Liao, however, dispelled rumors that the Brazilian will act as head coach. Souza de Brito is a member of the 1992 Brazilian men's volleyball team that captured an Olympic gold. And just as the body needs food to survive, so does the soul need its nourishment. That is why a community pantry in San Mateo, Rizal is earning praises for adding Bibles and other religious books to its initiative. Retired Sorsogon Bishop Arturo Bastes praised the organizers of this type of community book pantry, saying these initiatives help in uplifting spiritual well-being amid the pandemic. He said since the Bible is the Word of God, giving away Bibles along with food is a commendable act of charity as they distribute food for the body and the soul. For his part, Caloocan Bishop Pablo Virgilio David said they have also been giving out Bibles in his diocese in partnership with the Philippine Bible Society. Meanwhile, the Eastern Police District in Pasig is likewise distributing Bibles in its EPD Pamamarisan Pantry. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Malacanang says the country is doing good in its fight against COVID-19. Health Secretary Francisco Duque reports that a decreasing number of COVID-19 cases in the country as the government boosts its healthcare capacity. Rollout of Sputnik V vaccines in 5 selected cities in Metro Manila start today. And those who have finished the Step 1 and Step 2 registration of PhilSys for the national ID will receive their cards within the week. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IDC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day. Stay safe, everyone.